Hey, everybody. How's it going out there? It is Wednesday already. That means we have literally 2 weeks left of school. Um, Humanities through Film, Shasta College. Here we go. It's Wednesday. It was a beautiful fall day again today. No rain in sight. But I hope you guys are out there watching movies and have digested the turkey and getting all ready to splurge all your hard-earned dollars on Christmas presents. Good luck with that. We literally have 2 more weeks of school. So only thing we have left, you've done all 7 of the essays. Of course, I haven't graded them yet. They'll get graded. So you have and you've done the quiz, so you're done with that. The other thing you need to do is the final research paper. I'll post that tonight, after I'm done with this. And assignments, it's open now. Between now and then the school, get it in. And it could be on any topic. Some people have texted me. There are special topics. I usually okay it, but I need to know what it is. If you don't want to do that, I will post maybe 8 or 9 subjects. Pick a subject. You'll have to write about one of those. And it is a research paper. That means you got to do some research paper, go deep on the subject, 3-page minimum. Could be 5 or 6 pages. I don't care. It'll have to have a works cited page because you'll be getting the research from somewhere. I need to know where you got it. Please just don't go to Wikipedia and look everything up there and copy and paste. That will bum me out, man. And it won't do your grade any good either. It's worth 10 points, the usual 10. And then don't forget your journals. Keep up on the journals. You might not think you need the 10 points, but you might need it. And the journal will be due the last week of school too. So in 2 weeks, you got to hand in the journal and this paper. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on that. Look for the assignments and assignment about this last paper. I'll post that tonight. Anyway, this evening, I don't like it gets dark now so early, but it is what it is. So what did I see this weekend? I saw a great series. I thought it was great on Netflix called Queen's Gambit. Everything. Remember my last lecture a couple days ago was about the future of cinema. Where are we going with it? Is the future of cinema simply on TV now? For a large part, it is. And so, yes, we can write about things on the TV. I used to make sure everybody in the class was writing about movies that are only seen in movie theaters. But in television, I teach a television class too. That was a separate deal. Now they're really entwined together. It depends on the device you're looking at. And if you're looking at it on a small screen, it could be a movie, it could be a TV series. It's a crazy jumbled up world right now. So there's some really good stuff that's streaming. Queen's Gambit was one of them. There's some really good streaming out there. Hope you guys maybe are enjoying that. I like a good, fun, smart show. The last one I watched was called Schitt's Creek. Wonderful. I watched it I think it was on for 6 years. Anyway, they just finished up with it about a rich family who loses everything. They have to go live in this old motel. Great characters, really funny, insightful and funny. No violence, no car chases, no gun shootouts. Nobody throwing racist remarks around or superheroes showing up in skin-tight tights with a cape. None of that. Just human beings trying to get through their day. That's my cup of tea. Not everybody's cup of tea, obviously. Anyway, so if you want to write about superheroes on your final paper, you better come up with something interesting, not just the fact that you like it. I don't really care one way or the other. If you like it, tell me why it means anything and what it has to do with our culture we're living in. This is humanities through film. So try to connect your essays, this last final paper, I should say, the research paper, to the current culture we're living through. So if you're going to watch, there's a lot of stuff right now, and it really relates to our pandemic times that we're living through. Subjects are really close, so that's very current. So try to connect those dots. That's fine. That's good. That's what it's all about, man. Anyway, today I'm going to briefly talk about documentary films. What is your idea of a documentary? I can't hear you. Ah, yeah. Documentaries are nonfiction films based on a true incident or a true incident. They're based on the truth. I hear that a lot. Like fiction films aren't the truth. And documentary, maybe the ones I grew up with are usually boring. They're academic documentaries. You'd see them in school. They'd show them about government or World War II or something. And that's all changed, though. It started changing many years ago when documentaries started exploring subjects that weren't historically relevant. If that's a good way to put it. I don't know if it is or not, but the topics were interesting. And I'm going to talk about a couple filmmakers right now who made some of the greatest documentaries ever, and they're still out there making them. Not the Maisel brothers are both dead, so they're not making documentaries. The Maisels, Albert and David Maisel, started in the '60s, and they started a sort of cinema verte. It's another fancy French word for life that happens in front of the lens. You're not making the life up. It happens. You happen to be there shooting it with a camera, and you're not planning it. You're not staging it. You're not telling the people in the scene what to say or where to move or how to move or what the story is. You're just essentially recording it. And if you're lucky, you could catch gold. If you're not, you got nothing. Except for a bunch of boring footage. Now look at YouTube right now. Everybody's posting. There's so many people are posting their YouTube videos of them buying a new car, them buying a guitar, them cooking a meal. People talking about their sex lives, to people talking about their obsessions. So we've really pushed documentary into the current lexicon of contemporary culture that now it's getting hard to distinguish what is documentary and what is not. A lot of films that might be a documentary have staged scenes in it. There's a new one out. I want to see it very much. Earl Morris is a wonderful documentarian who directed this movie called The Thin Blue Line many years ago. But he used reenactments. Now, is that fair? Is it still a documentary? He has actors doing the reenactment of scenes that he couldn't film because he is shooting the story after it happened. If you don't shoot the story when it's happening, you've got to somehow put your documentary together. Then he gets expert sources, he gets talking heads, meaning interviews. And it was such a legendary film and popular, by the way, made money at the box office, which is rare for documentaries, that it was about a person who was accused of murdering a cop. And he was on death row in Texas. Well, after you watch the movie that Earl Morris very wonderfully put together, they found out that he did not commit the murder. Another guy did, and they released him, and they arrested the other guy through this documentary. Because the documentary, it unveiled the truth. And that's really a miracle when something like that happens. They actually changed lives. The guy got out of prison. The right guy got in prison. Justice was served, but justice was not served early on because the guy served many years in prison. There's another great documentary about the Memphis uh, kids, goth kids in the I think it was in the early '90s. Three kind of outsider goth kids. You know what that is? You know what goth is, right? They wear the black hoods and stuff. They listen to Black Sabbath and whatever. And they were these two kids were found brutally murdered, and I say brutal, folks. It was brutal, meaning they just weren't killed. Their sex organs were removed, and they were messed up, and it looked like a ritual. It looked like some kind of satanic ritual. Well, that was all false. But these kids were living in Memphis, and they listened to heavy metal music. Judas Priest was one of them. And their lyrics were essentially had satanic implications. And so when the DA glommed onto that, and the fact that these were the kids at the local kids at the high school, they were the local losers at the high school, and they loved heavy metal music, and they're kind of fascinated with witchcraft and whatnot. So they immediately went to these kids. They didn't have any real proof that they'd did the murders. One of the three goth kids, the Memphis kids, was below average in IQ. He would be considered mentally retarded. And through intimidation, he confessed to the killings. Now, these kids are only 16 years old. When you watch the documentary, you can see how wrong the prosecutors were, how quick to judge they were about the music they were listening to, and how they dressed with their black outfits and the hoods they wore to hide their features, and the long hair and the goth makeup. You know what goth is, folks. If you think of The Cure and Susie and the Banshees, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, people interested in vampires, that's all gothic. Anyway, but you're watching this movie and it's so frustrated because it's so obvious that the prosecutor has the wrong guys. And during the movie, you're watching it and they keep cutting to the one guy who was one of the kids who was killed, his father, uncle, I can't remember which right now. And every time they interviewed him, you came out of it feeling he's the one that did it. And he was almost confessing to it. It's so obvious something's wrong with this person, and they got the wrong guy. Well, guess what, folks? They convicted these kids. They gave two of them life sentences without parole, and they sent the one kid, Damien, the head guy, who was kind of the ringleader of the heavy metal kids, the goth kids at the high school. They put him on death row, and he was on there for 10 years. And they kept fighting for his cause. This documentary came out. Rock stars like Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam and Bono from U2 came to their aid, meaning they put their clout behind getting them possibly a new trial. And another documentary was filmed later. I think there's been 3 now. And after 10 years, they were released from prison. The one kid is off death row, but they were not totally exonerated. To get out of prison, they had to confess to not to have killed anybody. They had to sign a legal document. If they wanted to get out, they had to sign this document. And now they're all out, and they're out there in the world. You can Google this stuff on YouTube. You can find Damien on YouTube. This this messed them up for a long time. They never did find the killers, and the guy who was in the documentary who seemed like possibly the guy who did it, he has died since. And so it was just a travesty of justice, but it's on a documentary. It was being filmed after the fact, not during it. And so the filmmakers are really very thorough. If you film something like that and you make accusations that the prosecutor was wrong, you better have some proof about it. And they did. So that was another one that changed everything, and it was popular at the box office. The Maisel brothers were two brothers, and they started filming documentaries. They filmed the Beatles the first time they came to America, their first tour, the very first time. They got that job. And so they followed the Beatles around on their tour. They refer to their cinema as direct cinema. And essentially, they try not to interfere with the subject. They film the subject without getting in the way, they want to be like a fly on a wall. They don't even want the subject to even realize they're there, so they try to stay out of their way. They don't ask them questions. They don't interact with them. They try not to. Of course, they're going to have some interaction. And so they try to get at more of the pure truth of the moment. Well, later on, they would get hired to do other jobs, of course, always hustling for jobs, New Yorkers they were. And they hit it big with a couple of movies that actually put them on the map and made their careers. One of them was called Gimme Shelter, which is a documentary covering the Rolling Stones. In 1969, they went on tour for first time in many years with a new guitar player. They weren't even sure if they're going to have an audience. That's how iffy their career was in 69. And they ended up playing a concert for free called Altamonte at the Altamonte Speedway, which is down by Central California, down by why am I drawing a blank where it's down by Modesto. It was a speedway for stock car races. And watch the movie. It's devastating you. In fact, I'm going to send you to YouTube and watch some scenes from it, I think, if I can find any. There are some. And it was during this concert of the Rolling Stones where the Rolling Stones hired the Hells Angels, believe it or not, for security. It did not turn out well. The Hells Angels were misbehaving that day. They were drunk and buzzing around on bad drugs. And they brought a lot of bad violence to it, and they kept pounding the hippies who were stoned on really bad LSD. And you could watch it all because the Maisel brothers filmed it all. And the Hells Angels, if they got near the stage or if an innocent person accidentally touched one of their motorcycles, they would literally beat them almost to death with pool cues, pool sticks, boys and girls. They're just a bunch of guys, and they hated hippies, by the way. The Hells Angels might have had long hair, and they looked like outlaws, but they were not hippie outlaws. A lot of them were vets from Korea War. They're a little older than the hippies, and they did not like hippies because it looked like they just wanted to be stoned and wander around naked all day, and the Angels didn't put up like that one bit. It seemed being unpatriotic to them. Well, during the violence of this concert, Stones stopped many times. Jagger said, "Please stop beating up everybody." They would start songs again, and during one song, a young man, 19 years old, was stabbed to death by the Rolling Stones. I'm sorry, by the Hells Angels, who were supposedly protecting the Rolling Stones. And it's on film. Now, at the time, nobody was doing it. Looked like chaos. You can't really see what's going on until you watch the movie, and they slow the frames down. And this kid, was stupid enough to bring a gun to the concert. And in the footage, you could see him in slow motion. He is pointing the gun. You don't know where he's pointing it. He could be pointing it at the Hells Angels. He could be pointing it at Mick Jagger. The Hells Angels pounced on him and they stabbed him to death with many stab wounds, and he died right there in the scene. It's all in the film, and that's, maybe you've heard of Altamonte. It was the closure of the 60s. 1969, three things, monumental things happened. Actually, many things, but 1969 was quite a bumper year for our culture. One was Woodstock, which happened in August of 69, and it turned out great. The biggest live concert ever in the history of live concerts, peace and love and music for 3 days. Everybody got along. It looked like the hippie dream was working. We also landed on the moon. It looked like John F. Kennedy, who said space age, space is the new frontier, looked like he might have been right. Then a bad thing happened. Charles Manson popped up, and his merry band of murderers hacked a bunch of people to death on his instructions. And then on top of that, in December of 69, there was Altamonte, which had another murder. And it kind of closed out the 60s, meaning, 69 is closing out the 60s. And 1 month it's going to be 1970. But also it looked like hippies were a bad deal. Look what the hippies did. Look what Charles Manson did. And he was considered a hippie. He wasn't, folks. Look what they did at Altamonte. Hells Angels killed this guy. They weren't hippies. The guy they killed wasn't a hippie. He was just a kid from Oakland who was stupid enough to bring a gun to the concert. And everybody says it closed kind of the 60s peace and love dream out. It was the end of it. And do I agree with that? It makes sense to me. Things changed in the 70s big time. We're still going to Vietnam War. Nixon was in the White House. It was dark times. And that movie covers a lot of it. The Maisel brothers went on to, that was a huge successful movie. Now, they were there at the right time or the right place. And so even though they're recording something tragic, they were lucky enough to record it. And it became a hit movie. And it made the Rolling Stones look like they were kind of careless with the way they handled their fans. They didn't come off that great in it. The Maisel brothers later on did a bunch of other marvelous films. One of them was called Grey Gardens. Can't go into all, but I'll show you. I'll make you guys go watch some clips from Grey Gardens on YouTube about these two eccentric sisters, Big Edie and Little Edie, living in a horrible, horrible conditions on Long Island, and very fancy part of Long Island now, but very, very fancy. Only billionaires live there now. And they were related to Jackie Kennedy, and who was Jacqueline Onassis by now. They were her aunts and cousins. And so they got a small stipend from Jack's sister, Lee Ratswell, and they lived in filth. There's a mother and daughter, and I would say they were crazy, but they weren't. They're really brilliant women, but they had lost and given up everything. And now they lived in this broken down shack of a house that barely functioned. It was so rotten that raccoons had invaded the house, and they took over the house. There was like 50 raccoons living in the attic, and they were eating through the ceilings. and they must have had 50 cats, and the cats were not potty trained, folks, and you can imagine what that's like. And it's brilliant, brilliant movie about these two eccentric, kind of brilliant women who at one time were rich socialites, and how they fell from grace. And they were there. They recorded them. And it became a huge hit. And then it actually became a musical on Broadway, believe it or not. And then later on, it was turned into a HBO movie, a really good one, where actors played their parts. Drew Barrymore actually played Little Edie, and she was really good in it. And Jessica Lange played Big Edie. They're both excellent in it. Anyway, great story. They went on to do many, many more documentaries. David Maisel died in I think the late 80s. Alfred Maisel lived up until about 2 years ago, and he got to be in those 90s, and he did some incredible work. And this thing they called direct cinema. The last one, the other one I want to talk about is Werner Herzog, German, who was a fiction filmmaker, made a lot of great fiction films like Fitzcarraldo and Nosferatu and so many more. Later on, when he had hard time getting money for his fiction films because they were quirky and offbeat, he started shooting documentaries, and he's probably shot more documentaries in the last 20 years. I can't keep up with them all. He shoots a new documentary maybe two times a year. Now that we have this cheap digital equipment, it's easier. And one of his most famous documentaries he did, it's the only one we're going to talk about right now, was called Grizzly Man. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've seen it. I'm going to ask you to watch the previews on YouTube. I'll post that stuff on there on Canvas like I usually do. And Grizzly Man was about a guy who went to Alaska, and every year for about 12 years or so, he filmed and took where the grizzly bears came every year to feed, and where people were not usually supposed to be in there, because a hungry grizzly bear is nothing to joke around with, folks. And he was there. He went back there every year. He became kind of a star. This is like a little bit before YouTube, but he was putting out these videos. He became a guest on David Letterman, on Jay Leno, and he started lecturing in colleges about saving, the grizzlies and saving that pristine area in Alaska. But he was also becoming kind of a star over it, no doubt about it. And he's in the movie a lot because he filmed himself when he's isolated up there with the bears. Well, one year he goes up there, he has a new girlfriend, and he convinces her to go with him. She doesn't want to, she feels uncomfortable, but she goes along. And during the night, unbeknownst to them, a bear came into their campground and started to attack them in their tent. And what you hear, he turned his camera on, but it didn't have the lens cap on, so you don't see anything, but you hear the attack. Now, it's not in the movie. We're just told about hearing the attack. Because it's too gruesome to listen to, supposedly. But he's yelling for her to run for her life, and she's screaming, and this bear is, let me tell you, folks, a grizzly bear might weigh 1,500 pounds. It might be 8 feet tall. It has hands like this, with claws like this. You cannot fight a grizzly bear. When rangers are up there, they carry around 44 Magnum pistols, and sometimes that won't even stop them if they're in a rage. It's hard to stop a grizzly who's in a feeding frenzy. And the guy, of course, didn't believe in violence, and so he didn't have any weapons. And he was heard hitting the bear in the head with a frying pan. Well, I hate to say it, folks, that's going to piss the bear off even more. He runs, the bear runs him down, grabs him from behind, and guess what, folks? I just thought I'd tell you this. A big bear like that, how they kill their prey is they rip your head off if they can. This is any animal they're attacking. They know that's will take you down. They're not biting your legs, they're going for your neck. And you have to protect your head and neck no matter what. But when a thing that weighs 1,500 pounds and has hands this big, they could pull your head off relatively easy. And also, here's another thing about grizzlies that maybe you don't know. The best part of eating a live animal, any animal, is their head, their brains, and all the goodies. All the goodies. That's like eating ice cream to them. And so a couple days later, the rangers, they were supposed to report back the two kids. They didn't hear from them. They suspected something evil had happened. The rangers went to their campsite. You could only get there by helicopter. And they found his body with its head off, folks. They found her body 50 yards up the way. And guess what, folks? Her head was gone too. They'd both been killed by one or more bears. When they did the autopsy on the bear, yes, folks, they found their people's body parts inside these bears. They digested them. And the rangers didn't know what bear did which. And there's about half a dozen bears in the area, and they killed every single one of them. Now, because supposedly once a bear goes rogue like that, the only way to stop them from doing it again is to kill them. Now, the thing that our hero, was trying to protect and save, he ended up not saving anything. Not only did he lose his own life, but the beloved bears he protected, he lost their lives too. Cautionary tale, folks. Bears might look cute on videos, but they are predators. And they don't want to be friends with you. They do not. They would like to chomp on you. Yes, they would. Anyway, the Herzog, that's a powerful documentary, and it made money because it played in theaters, because the rise of documentaries that were popular started making money. Roger Moore's another one. Not Roger Moore, but Michael Moore. Michael Moore, maybe hate him, maybe don't. He's kind of the overweight provocateur filmmaker who made Fahrenheit 9/11, brilliant film, and many, many more. And he's put documentaries on the map because his documentaries make a boatload of money. He's charming, he's funny, he's insightful. A lot of conservative people hate his guts because he's usually going after that type of person or whatever it is. And so there was another guy who kind of followed suit, who made a Supersize This, kind of a similar deal. Maybe you've seen it, very entertaining. It's about a guy who decides to eat McDonald's food all 3 meals a day for 30 days, and he films it. Very interesting. I'm not sure it says much about our culture. His health went downhill because eating McDonald's like that might be bad for your health. I wouldn't suggest it, folks. But during the movie, I remember they're doing an interview with somebody in the movie, and he'd been eating at McDonald's every day for 20 years. And he was a little skinny guy. His health was great. So it's hard to say. Anyway, so that's another entertaining type of thing, movie, and it became a very big back to box office. He's gone on to have TV shows. He's got a bunch of different, he's still making documentaries, mostly for television. The last one we're going to talk about is Frederick Weissman, who is getting way up there in age right now, like early 90s, and he's made some incredible films. Once again, it's direct cinema. He does not add music, narration, interviews, nothing. He just films a subject. What he does, he and his camera crew and sound crew come in, and they'll follow a subject for 6 weeks about every day. Film everything, no matter what it is. He doesn't even know what the story is going to be. He knows he's filming a topic, but he's not manipulating the story until the editing, of course. And then that's when the manipulation starts. And his movie that put him on the map was called the Titica Follies. He filmed in an insane asylum. This was in the 60s. He filmed in an insane asylum when they used to put these poor people away who were literally batshit crazy before we had all the medications we have now. And it was brutal. He got inside this place and it was brutal. Their living conditions, they lived in filth. They were abused by the people who cared for them. It was shocking. And it gave this guy a career. He mostly does his movies, is financed through PBS. And he's made probably 30, 40 documentaries at least. And he takes a topic and he films that topic for 6 weeks. Besides that one, mental institutions, he usually takes institutions. He did one called Berkeley. He went down to Berkeley College, University of Berkeley, and filmed down there the workings of the college, the students, the administration, everything, the life at college. So you get a real good feel for what it's like going to Berkeley. Some of it's boring. Some of it's very exciting. He just did recently a new film. I can't remember what it's called. It just came out. And he's 92, folks, and he's still passionate about his craft. He did one I'm going to make you watch. I hope you want to watch it. He filmed about 5 years ago. I know you're going to like this one. He did a movie called Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse is a sophisticated nightclub in Paris. The women perform naked, and they're strippers, but they're just not stripping. It's all put to a very theatrical use, lighting, music, dance. Well, he filmed them for 6 weeks as they're getting a new cast, how they're cast, these ladies. And it's very, if you have trouble with nudity, don't watch it. You can watch it on YouTube. It's a lot of naked women, but it's so non-sexual because they use their bodies like their job, because that's what it is. They don't get this big pornographic hit off it. You do not. It looks like an artistic endeavor. And so all the girls are auditioning. They're not ashamed of their bodies. They're there to get a pretty good career. If you get cast in one of their shows, you could be in it for 5 years and you can make a pretty good living off of it. And the tourists flood to that place in Paris. I don't know what they're doing now during the pandemic. It's all probably shut down. But it's called Crazy Horse. And Frederick is still out there. He still believes in direct cinema. And they asked him recently, well, when are you going to, everybody always says this about musicians, artists, filmmakers, writers, when are you going to retire? Well, there is no retiring. As long as you're creative, you don't retire. What are you going to retire from? Go fishing all day? I don't think so. No, you're not if you're creative and you've got ideas. And he says, I haven't even scratched the surface of what I could do. But luckily for him, his movies don't have to make money. They do well, but because PBS finances them. It's like Ken Burns. You all know him, who did Civil War, baseball, jazz, wonderful documentaries, filmed for PBS. And it took him 2 or 3 years to make each one. Maybe saw Civil War, wonderful, wonderful documentary. and or jazz. He did one on country music last year. The PBS finances all of that, and that means he's got a. He doesn't have to go out and look for money. He is paid by PBS to make these films, and so his films have a certain look and tenor to them. Maybe you know what they are, with the music and the narration. Is it cutting edge documentaries? No, not really. Are they profound and meaningful? Absolutely. And on that, look for the YouTube stuff. I'll sign it on Canvas. Watch some of these. You've got all your essays in. Now you just got to do your final paper. Look for the assignment and final paper. Make sure you're keeping up to date on your journal. Not sure what else is left. Oh, that's right. And don't forget, everything is cinema.